Madam President, my bipartisan amendment is a common-sense approach to protecting both jobs and children's health. And it has to do with the new regulation that the EPA has put into effect as of April 22nd that requires mandatory training for anyone who is involved in disturbing or removing lead-based paint. And let me say, Madam President, that I support the intention of this rule. In fact, along with my colleague from Rhode Island, Senator Reed, I have done a great deal of work to try to reduce the exposure of our children to lead-based paint. He and I have held joint hearings in Rhode Island and in Maine because both of our states have housing stocks that are older than the national average and thus have considerable lead-based paint. So I understand how important this issue is, and I support the rule. Unfortunately, Madam President, the EPA has completely botched the implementation of this rule because of its inexcusably poor planning, and it did not ensure that there was an adequate number of trainers to provide the required classes to ensure that contractors understand the requirements of the new rule. What my amendment would do is prohibit the EPA from using funds in this bill to levy fines against contractors under its new lead paint rule through September 30th. Now, based on what I've seen in Maine, I believe that the lion's share of contractors are awaiting EPA's training classes. Unfortunately, while they wait for EPA to deliver this training, they are at risk of being fined up to $37,500 per day per violation. Now, while I support EPA's rule because we must continue our efforts to safely rid toxic lead-based paint from our homes, it is simply not fair to put these contractors at risk of these enormous fines when it is EPA's fault that these contractors have not been able to get the training that is required under the new rule. EPA estimated that it only needed to train 1,400 people in my state, 1,400 people. In fact, there are more than 20,000 individuals in the state of Maine that require training. EPA assumes that they're part of large firms and that only one person at each firm needs to be certified. That's just not how it works.